Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of the Triple Play. This is Danielle, and today I am joined by Jake and Matt. And let's just go ahead and get started talking with this Tennessee-Bama game from this weekend. If there's one silver lining, it's not as bad as it could have been.
Very true.
That's for sure. The Vols lost to Alabama 19-14. Alabama was number 8 going into this game. The Vols with the loss are now 3-4, 1-3 in the SEC. But let's just go ahead and take a look at at stats really quick. The Josh Dobbs was 13 for 22 with 171 yards and 1 touchdown, while Jake Coker for Alabama was 21 for 27, 247 yards, 1 interception, which is an improvement for him despite how he played last week. But one thing to note with both of these quarterbacks is they were sacked 5 times in this game, which is pretty insane. Dobbs has been kind of all over the place, I guess we could say, this season. But with Coker, he's struggled, but the 5 sacks that he took was pretty impressive, I guess, for the Tennessee defense.
That was a really good showing for us. Losing Shy Tuttle a couple weeks ago. I was expecting us not to do hardly anything this game defensive wise, but going out there sacking him 5 times, that was definitely a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, really a good thing to see. I think most people would expect that Alabama's front seven would be able to get a really good rush against any offensive line, let alone a young one with Jack Jones and Chance Hall starting for Tennessee. But I think that it was just, like you said, man, a really good thing to see with Tennessee's. And honestly, definitely a surprise on my part.
Yeah, I agree with that. This whole game was kind of a surprise in my opinion. I did not think it was going to be a 5-point game. I thought it was going to be much worse. But, looking at some other stats too, Jalen Hurd, I want to say it's not a bad showing for him, but it's kind of quiet. 18 carries, 92 yards, 1 touchdown. But on that same token, Josh Dobbs had 16 carries for 19 yards. So, rushing wasn't too bad. But Derrick Henry for Alabama, 28 carries, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns, and one of those being a late touchdown. Henry's he's looked so good. I can't find a different word for him. He's just looked so good.
Going back to the Jalen Hurd thing, I saw a stat earlier that said nobody this season has had a 100-yard rusher against Alabama. And the fact that Jalen Hurd was 8 away from getting 100 yards on them, that's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't even think of it. I'd seen something about that, I want to say going into this week, and I'm like, okay, yeah, well, maybe Hurd will get it. I honestly thought he would. That was just me kind of with wishful thinking and everything, but still, you're definitely right. 8 yards away from that, that's insane against this Alabama defense. I would say they're easily one of the best in the nation right now.
Easily, especially their run defense.
Oh, completely. And we're going to talk more about running defenses later when we talk about Kentucky because that's going to be really interesting. But one note with this game that I think it's leaving a lot of Vol fans mad. I know that I've talked to quite a few who are just really angry about it. Aaron Medley had 3 missed field goals. I know one was 43 yards, another one was 51 yards, but I don't know what the third one was. But the thing that bothers most people, it kind of scares me too, is the fact that these 3 field goals, if the Vols could have made at least 2 of them, then they would have won. The Vols would have won. It's just whenever little things like this are happening, little small, minute, 3-point plays are happening, and the Vols aren't capitalizing on them, that's what's turning around and hurting them the most this season, I think.
Yeah, I think that I said going into this game that if Tennessee didn't capitalize on their opportunities, as rare and as small as we think they may be, then it would absolutely hurt. But by the same token, Alabama did not capitalize on 3 should have been interceptions, and that really helps Tennessee. It could have been a lot worse if Alabama's defense had gotten those picks. So I think we should honestly be I'm not saying that we still stand for moral victories because we certainly don't. But, it could have been a lot worse. And I think we should be a little grateful for that, just for the fact that it was only a 5-point game against a top 10 team.
That's definitely probably the best-looking loss just about the best-looking loss you'll ever see.
Yeah.
It's sad how true that is, too.
Yeah.
It's completely sad.
I hate saying that, but it's
true.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
Yeah. After the game, Paul Feinbaum tweeted that just Alabama's grit really showed him something, but by the same token, Tennessee's guts and the way they played with that much heart and just that much I mean, I hate to say grit going back to Alabama, but even seeing the way Jalen Hurd ran the football, just really a good showing, but just sucks we didn't come out with a win.
I agree, and like I said at the beginning of the show, the Vols are now 3-4 on the season, 4-3 in the 1-3 in the SEC. Excuse me. So it's tough. I mean, they're 4th in the SEC East right now, middle of the pack, and the teams that are ahead of you, it's still kind of weird with one of them. It's hard to believe that Kentucky is in 3rd place, but that's what's coming up next for the Vols. They take on Kentucky this Saturday. On Halloween, are we going to see the black uniforms that we saw in 2009 with Lane Kiffin? Most likely not. But I have heard that Kentucky will be wearing black, so if Tennessee decides to wear orange on the road, then it's a complete Halloween festive game. But who knows? That probably will not happen. Those are just rumors that I've heard and I've kind of rolled my eyes at. But like I said, Kentucky this weekend, that's going to be at 7:30 on SEC Network. And looking into this game, before we start talking about what the Vols need to do to beat Kentucky, let's look at Kentucky playing against Mississippi State this week. They lost to Mississippi State 42-16. In easily what is one of the worst showings I've seen from this Kentucky team this season. Because going into this game, every single, whether it was a win or a loss this season, has been decided by single-point margins. So for them to lose by double digits this time around, it's not like Kentucky this season. This team's been on the up and up this season, too.
Yeah, by big double digits, too. It wasn't even like 10 points. Final score was 42-16. So they just got rolled on.
They did, and their defense just completely broke down. I mean, they've been running the 3-4 or the 4-3 all season. They go back and forth between the two. But I think they primarily ran the 3-4 in this one, if I'm thinking correctly. So, I mean, for that to just completely break down, it kind of gives the Vols an idea of what to look for this weekend. They're probably going to go with the 4-3 a little bit more against the Tennessee running game for sure. I mean, they don't have the best rush defense out there, but they do know how to stop the passing game, which is going to be scary for the Vols. But speaking of passing game, Patrick Tolles for the Wildcats, he was 23 for 42, 218 yards, no touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. And then Stanley Williams, he had 18 carries and 95 yards for the Wildcats, but the only rushing touchdown came from Tolles. And this is a quarterback who's not afraid to lean into a tackle and take you down. So, I mean, the Tennessee defense is going to have their hands full with Tolles. And with Stanley Williams, but you also have another running back in JoJo Kemp to look forward to as well, because he's been kind of quiet this season for Kentucky since Stoops has been really leaning more towards Williams, but that's kind of questionable. He's done that the past couple of seasons. So for this Tennessee team going into this game on Saturday against the Wildcats, in my opinion, this is just me talking, I think the key to beating Kentucky is breaking down that defense at all costs. The Vols have to make completions on pretty much every single pass or a majority of the passes, because Kentucky has the complete potential to do this and stop them from getting into the red zone, because I think I saw somewhere that whenever they get into the red zone, they score 93% of the times that they're in there. That's a pretty good probability that they can just get in and score. So, I mean, them having the home field advantage in Commonwealth, I'll open it up to you guys. What do you think is the key for this game?
I think Josh Dobbs. I think he needs to have a really good game. Going into Kentucky, it's going to be the atmosphere there is going to be really difficult for us going in.
Yeah.
I think we will get the win. I just think Josh Dobbs, he's going to definitely have to complete some passes. His receivers are going to have to help him out. Can't have any drop passes like we did against Arkansas. If we do that, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah, and if Kentucky's defense is as stingy as you were talking about they should have been against Mississippi State, I mean, obviously they weren't, but if they can hold up against Tennessee's offense, I think that we might see a few more runs from Dobbs like we have been. And
probably
in the way that he's run the ball lately, he's not just ducking out of bounds to, I mean, he's trying to run through people and trying to get a first down, and he's going to need to do that if need be against Kentucky.
I agree with that, and I think it's so tough, too, trying to compare this Kentucky game against Mississippi State with, what the Vols can look forward to on Saturday based off of, a quarterback perspective. Because they were going against Dak Prescott, he's Dak Prescott. What do you say about him? He had 6 touchdowns in this game, 3 rushing, 3 passing. He was 25 for 35, 348 yards, 3 touchdowns with 1 interception. That's just passing. Rushing, he had 13 carries for 117 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's easily one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. He's had some really off games this season, but you're going to get that every once in a while. But it's just so hard to kind of think what Josh Dobbs can do against this Kentucky defense after this kind of showing from one of the best quarterbacks in the conference.
Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen. But like I said, that game is at 7:30 this Saturday, and it will be on SEC Network. So that should be really exciting. And SEC Nation's going to be there that morning. So that makes the 4th time the SEC Nation has been at a Tennessee game this season. So who knows what's going to happen with that. But looking at more SEC games, we're going to look over at Arkansas and Auburn. This game lasted forever. I thought it wasn't going to end. 4 overtimes. And Arkansas wins it 54-46. Brandon Allen for Arkansas. He was 19 for 31, 233 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. But the guy to talk about in this game was Peyton Barber, the running back for Auburn. He had 37 carries, 120 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's insane.
Yeah, I think it was kind of interesting how Auburn, they didn't have any passing touchdowns, but they had 9 receivers that caught a pass.
Yeah, which was weird. I looked at that too, and I kind of shook my head. I refreshed my page. I'm like, something's wrong on this. This isn't right. But yeah, that's just weird.
Yeah,
it's really weird. And especially like Auburn. I mean, you usually see like passing touchdowns from them. Like they're usually like a pass-heavy team. I mean, they definitely were a couple years ago. They were definitely kind of mixed with being rush-heavy and pass-heavy. But yeah, for 9 receivers to get touches and there not be a touchdown was really very interesting. But also, looking at Arkansas, this is a team that struggled to just get a win for a while. They beat the Vols and they lost to Alabama, but then picked up this win. So I don't know if it's too early to say it or if it's kind of too much of a stretch to say, but could Arkansas be making a slight comeback in the SEC off of this win?
I would say, well, okay, let me start by saying that I am somewhat biased in this, like you are with Kentucky. My dad is from Arkansas, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Brett Bielema has been doing a good job lately, and
he has been.
I mean, they've got a good football team. They've got a good running back in Alex Collins, with Jonathan Williams being out this year with Collins. I mean, we saw even looking back 2 weeks ago the way he ran against Tennessee.
Yeah.
And he's just really been doing well, and I look for them to rebound and finish the season strong.
Yeah, I agree. I think all the preseason hype for them at the beginning of the year, it was kind of like us. It was just too much in such a little amount of time.
Such a letdown at the beginning of the season.
Such a letdown, and now they're kind of getting back up to where they should be. I do think they'll end the season strong, and then next year, like with us,
look out.
They'll have a pretty good team. They'll be maybe not at the top of the SEC West, but definitely competing for it.
I'd say second or third.
I agree with that. I'd probably go more towards third. I don't see them being a completely top tier team in the SEC West, but definitely being like a contender.
Yeah.
In some ways, like maybe third or
really
fourth,
putting
maybe
themselves back in the mix.
Exactly. Definitely towards the middle of the pack, if anything. That's like worst case scenario, I would say. Maybe definitely third place there. Another game to look at: Ole Miss beating Texas A&M 23-3. This kind of changed up the rankings quite a bit this week, and we're going to talk more about rankings later. But this was a really, really, really nice way for Ole Miss to rebound after what happened to them last week against Memphis. In that loss there. But one note, we're going to talk more about rankings, like I said, but this moved the Rebels up from up to number 19 after being down at number 24. And I mean, I don't remember how high they were last week before the loss. I want to say they might have been like top 10. Might be wrong on that, but I mean, it's good for them to move back up. And then A&M was number 15 at the beginning of this game, and now they are unranked, but we'll look more at rankings in a second. Chad Kelly for Ole Miss, he was 26 for 41, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. That was pretty surprising, but another thing that I thought was really impressive was that A&M held to just 192 total yards, 134 passing and 58 rushing. But also another note was the turnovers in this game. A&M had 3 turnovers, and then Ole Miss only had 4. But I mean, for 7 turnovers to happen in a game, it's a lot. Yeah. But for these 2 teams too, I mean, that's kind of, you shouldn't have those kind of numbers. I'm kind of really disappointed in those turnover numbers.
I think something else that didn't help Texas A&M's case is that Kyler Murray their other quarterback,
Yeah.
he didn't play because
That's true.
of his behavior during the Alabama game. And then Kyle Allen just did not look anything like any quarterback playing in the SEC should look like. He had a stretch where he went 2 for 22 and negative 4 yards and then an interception before he got benched.
That's not what you were used to seeing out of Allen either.
Oh, yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
This is kind of a question I'm going to open up for discussion too. With this win, does this get Ole Miss back on track to where they definitely not just could be, or they should be?
I would say no, just because after talking to people who are students and fans at Ole Miss, just their thoughts, and then of course, I mean, I still can't get over the fact that they lost to Memphis, but I really don't think this was enough of a rebound for them. I mean, Kyle Allen underperformed, so beating them by 20 based on his performance alone, based on their offense, I don't think it was really that much of a stretch to say that this wasn't a beatdown based on Texas A&M's offensive performance. So I really don't think they're back yet, and I would say that they are honestly right now less of a comeback than Arkansas is.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. It's tough to tell.
I mean, you got to think Arkansas. They lost early in the season to Toledo and then Texas Tech, two teams that aren't very good. Yeah. Well, Texas Tech, they're a good team, but they're not Texas A&M.
Exactly.
You know?
True.
So
it's tough to tell with the SEC at this point. I feel like things are happening where you're just like, wait, what? Or that shouldn't be happening. But speaking of wait whats, Vanderbilt beat Missouri this weekend. And that gave Vanderbilt their first conference win since 2013, I'm sorry. Whenever they beat Tennessee that year. But for them to go a whole season without getting a conference win, I didn't even think it had been that long. Like, it hasn't been a whole season since they got a conference win. It has been. I had to double check it. I'm like, that's not true. But they got the win. They beat Missouri, and I think that's a prime win for Vanderbilt, too, to kind of get them going. That was a really low-scoring game. You're not expecting Mizzou to just put up 3 points against Vanderbilt. That's a big question mark, I think, in my opinion. And then another game that happened in the SEC, just to round out what happened this weekend, it was a non-conference game for LSU taking on Western Kentucky, and LSU got the win 48-20. Leonard Fournette, let's just keep going with his storyline. He actually looked kind of human this week, which is terrifying. He only had 26 carries for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. I'm pretty sure that's one of the lowest yardage totals we've seen from him this season.
I want to say that is the lowest because I saw
has to be.
I saw a stat that said he's one of the first, might even be the first, to have over 150 yards rushing in each of his first 7 games.
Yeah. I'm looking at his stats now. I had to go back and look because I'm not believing this, but this was his lowest. Second lowest was 158 against South Carolina 2 weeks ago. So that's crazy. And he's only had 2 games this season as well with just 1 touchdown, and that was also against South Carolina. But that game was, LSU got the win in that, but it was just, that was kind of an off week, I feel like, for LSU.
I think it's still pretty impressive, though, that we're talking about Leonard Fournette having a bad week with 150 yards.
I know. That's actually, it's laughable almost. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this for weeks on the show. If he's not the top contender for the Heisman, he has to be in the top.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd say right now, he's easily the top person for it. But looking over at the rankings, LSU has moved up from number 5 into the number 4 slot. So if the playoffs were happening now, they would be in the playoffs, which I think that's pretty much where they need to be. They need to be in that top 4 spot. 5 was good, but it was not good enough. But there are 5 teams in the rankings right now. Like I just said, LSU is at number 4, Alabama is at number 7, Florida is at number 11, Ole Miss is at 19, and Mississippi State is at 25, with A&M dropping out, like I mentioned earlier. But just looking at the way that there's been movement on the rankings, the only reason I would say that LSU got in, or even that Clemson got into, they were at number 6 last week, and now they're at number 3. We're going to talk about this game a little later, but Utah losing this weekend, that shook up pretty much everything. They were I honestly thought they were going to have a perfect season. I did not see them losing a game this season. And the way they lost it to USC, which we're going to talk about later, like I said, that was pretty interesting. But this Clemson team, I'm not really sure if I'm on the Clemson train right now. I don't really know if they're a top 4 team. They're good, don't get me wrong. But for them to go from 6-3, I'm still kind of questioning that.
I would definitely still keep them in the top 10. I don't know if I'd put them in the top 5.
No. No, I would definitely say like the 8 position would be a solid position for them. I don't know. I'm kind of at a question mark with that. It's just hard to believe. But Pittsburgh did move up for Nate Peterman. I'm going to talk about that really quick. They moved up from 25 to 23, and they're looking really good at 6-1 on the season. So it's nice to see Nate Peterman doing some good stuff at Pitt. But let's go ahead and look at some upsets that happened this week. Like we said earlier, wait, what? Like, that's all that we have to talk about right now with NCAA football. Georgia Tech gave Florida State their first loss of the season. Florida State was number 9. Georgia Tech got the win 22-16. The Seminoles were 16-10, or they were winning 16-10 at the half, and then Georgia Tech scored 12 unanswered points in the second half. And the biggest score of this game, in my opinion, I think most people's opinion, was the last-second field goal block.
Yeah.
I thought I was watching Michigan State all over again, just like different terms with special teams. But yeah, it was ran back, I want to say 78 yards for the touchdown. So I don't want to say it's good to see that happening against Florida State, but it's good to see that coming from Georgia Tech. Because they had a 5-game losing streak, I want to say, up until that moment. So that was really interesting. And 5 different players had double-digit yards for Tech as well. Justin Thomas being one of them. He was the passing leader and rushing leader for Tech. He was 4 for 10 passing, 67 yards, 2 interceptions, but he was more impressive on the rushing side with 13 carries and 88 yards and touchdown. So I think this game, specifically, I think it proves that anything can happen in college football, especially with last week. Another kick 6, I guess we could say. I know I saw somewhere, I think it was on ESPN, they were saying kick 6 the sequel. And I'm like, okay, well, who's going to be next? Like, who's going to be the third team if it happens again next week? But at this rate, it could happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, not at all. It's kind of, like I said, it's laughable with this as well as to who's going to be the next victim of this. Because it could be anyone. And looking at another game this weekend, UCLA beat number 20 Cal 40-24. Josh Rosen, what a guy. He had a great day on Saturday for UCLA. Excuse me. He had 34 complete passes, which is actually a school record for the Bruins. He was 34 for 47, 399 yards with 3 touchdowns. So one thing I want to open up with this, and this is also going to be the same discussion point with our next game that we're going to look at. After a solid 4-0 start, the Bruins dropped their last 2 games to Arizona State and then to Stanford. So does this kind of put UCLA back on the map in terms of their college football play?
I'd say it does. Mm-hmm. They had that one. I'd say the loss to Arizona State was a bad loss. Mm-hmm. But then losing to Stanford's a top 10 team right now. Yeah. They're actually really good. They're really Stanford has lost 1 game, and I don't see them losing another game this year. So I'd say, I would say that puts UCLA back on the track. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I saw a thing earlier, I think it might have been last week, that UCLA and USC were unranked for the first time since like 2009, because they both were unranked last week. Which is kind of crazy how things kind of flipped with like Cal going in to the top 25. But UCLA, and especially with Josh Rosen, he is a fantastic quarterback. He has been really good this season. UCLA is 5-2 right now, so that's not as bad as most people might be thinking. I mean, like you said, they did play Arizona State. That was a tough loss. And then Stanford's a great team. They have been this whole season. Like, they are really, really good. And for them to be at number 8 right now, that's fantastic. But going to the next game, Utah lost to USC. I thought they were going to have a perfect season. I thought Utah was just set in stone in that top 4 because they looked unstoppable. But they lost 42-24. Travis Wilson for Utah came into the game with only 3 interceptions on this season. But he went 24 for 36, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. I want to say I saw somewhere that this is the most interceptions that he has had since 2 seasons ago, whenever he had 16 interceptions for the season. Last season, he had 3 or 4 interceptions total, I want to say. Maybe even 5. But Travis Wilson has looked like a really solid quarterback this whole season. And USC is another team that's really been on a struggle the past couple of weeks with losses to Washington and then Notre Dame. They've been unranked, they're still unranked right now, I should say, despite beating this Utah team that dropped, 10 points or 10 spots in the rankings. So is USC also back on track after this win?
I think it definitely helps getting them back on track, but I'm just not ready to put them back on track yet.
No.
Like, I think they're getting there. I don't know if they can get there by the end of the season, though.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
I think also it's going to be tough for them to get ranked again. Like, they might get back on track for winning, but I don't see it being them being back on track to be put in the rankings.
Yeah. I agree. But going back to Utah, I do want to ask, what do you think about next week they have Oregon State at home? So do you think if they can get a blowout win over the Beavers, that would put them back in the top 20, 15?
I wouldn't say top 15. I would definitely say top 20. But that's just because, I mean, Oregon State's a good team. They always have been, but they just aren't performing as well as they usually do, or usually should, I guess I should say, this year as in years past. So, I mean, for Utah, little games like that, I mean, it's not really a little game, but Oregon State's not ranked.
Yeah, because it is Pac-12, but yeah, they're...
Exactly. So I definitely think it would move them back into the top 50, or top 20. Top 15, I feel like, or I mean, yeah, they're 13 right now. I don't see them going back into the top 10. I think maybe up to 12.
I think the only way they get back in the top 10 this week is if a lot of people in the top 10 just have a bad week and then lose to a bad team. And then they move up, just taking their spots. I think that's the only way they get back.
Yeah, and looking at the teams that are in the top 10 as well, like, that's kind of, I don't want to say it's improbable, but it's unlikely right now. Because the top 10s, like right now, there's Ohio State at number 1, Baylor at number 2, Clemson at number 3, LSU 4, TCU 5, Michigan State 6, Alabama 7, Stanford 8, Notre Dame 9, and then Iowa at number 10. I mean, if you're looking at any team that could be the weakest link out of this group, that's really tough to pick out. I mean, you have 3 teams that have losses on the season: Alabama, Stanford, and Notre Dame. So I just think it's too tough to tell. I could see Utah moving up to like maybe 11 or 12, but top 10, maybe 10th. If we're going to say in the top 10, maybe right at number 10, but I just don't see them going any further than that. But other games to look out for the rest of the FBS this weekend. Temple beat East Carolina 24-14. Memphis just completely demolished Tulsa 66-42. Memphis is going to be putting up big points like that for the rest of the season, in my opinion. And Paxton Lynch had 4 touchdowns in this game too, so another record showing for Memphis. Ohio State beat Rutgers 49-7. Baylor beat Iowa State 45-27. Clemson shut out Miami 58-0, and then the day after that game, so yesterday, Sunday afternoon, I saw the news that Miami had fired head coach Al Golden after that game. So I mean, that's not much of a surprise. Miami's 4-3 on the season right now, but whenever you lose 58-0, that's incredible. Michigan State beat Indiana 52-26. Stanford beat Washington 31-14. Oklahoma State beat Kansas 58-10. Oklahoma beat Texas Tech 63-27. Those are really big numbers by the Sooners. Toledo beat Massachusetts 51-35. Houston beat UCF 59-10. Duke beat Virginia Tech 45-43 in overtime. That's hard to believe. I was really hoping Virginia Tech would just shock everyone and beat Duke in that game. It wouldn't have been much of a shock. I mean, Virginia Tech is 3-5 on the season, but they are a strong team, and I think they're definitely one to look out for next year. And then Pitt beat Syracuse 23-20. So that's pretty much all that happened in the top 25 with college football. So now we're going to go ahead and look over at the NFL. And we're going to start off with the Titans. Oh, the poor Titans. It's been rough for them. It's been really rough. They lost to the Falcons 10-7 yesterday, which makes it the 5th straight loss for the Titans, putting them at 1-5, and also giving them the last place spot in the AFC South. So we could look at stats. We could go in depth with what the Titans did, but there's only one question to ask. Is there hope? Is there any hope for this Titans team? It's still early in the season, but they're 1-5, and things aren't looking pretty.
I think there's always hope, but the light at the end of the tunnel for the Titans is very far away and very dim. So I hesitate to say that they're going to do anything this season. If they can go out, get a good draft pick this year, maybe like get them somebody to protect Mariota.
That's true.
Definitely get that going. Then I think maybe next year they can start winning some games. Maybe. Who knows?
I think right now, like you said, the light's kind of like really just far away and everything. I feel like that's the same in the same token, you could say, like, use that analogy for a 500 season for them. It's going to be tough for them to hit 500. If they do, that's great, but I don't see it happening for the Titans at all this season.
But I think that we can agree, or at least I think that Mariota is the right guy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, he's absolutely the right guy, and I just think it's unfortunate that he's hurt right now like he is. He had a probable status, or no, he was questionable going into this week with the injury last week. So who knows? I haven't heard any word yet on what's going to happen for next week with him. So that'll be interesting to see what happens. And then the Broncos had a bye week this week. They will be playing this coming Sunday, November 1st, against the Packers. But the one question that's kind of been circling, Peyton was at the Tennessee-Alabama game this weekend. So talks have been circulating around Peyton, and if this bye week is actually going to help him or hurt him in terms of getting back to where he should be and where he usually is. I mean, he's already had 10 interceptions total this season, which is insane for Peyton Manning. We're not used to seeing this at all. He's had at least one interception in every single game this season. So will this bye week, just for you guys, do you think it's actually going to help him get back to where he is, or do you think there's a lot of work that actually has to be done before the end actually happens?
I would say not just because I'm a loyalist, but he's competitive.
Absolutely.
As we've always seen. But I would say that after a bye week, Tennessee had a bye week before Alabama. They played strongly, very strongly against the Tide. So I would say that for a player with the status and the talent that Peyton Manning has always possessed, that he's going to come back strong.
Yeah, Peyton Manning, he's obviously one of the greatest quarterbacks, and even though he hasn't looked good this season, the Broncos are still undefeated.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so whatever he's doing, he's getting the job done.
Yeah.
So I think
it doesn't have to look pretty. It's just
right. I think the bye week is going to help him, but I really don't think that. Well, there is some amount of getting back on track he needs to do, but going off the win column for the Broncos, they're still doing great.
Right.
I mean, being undefeated.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note, like, it's not just one guy that makes up a team, even though, like, when people talk about the Broncos, it's always just Peyton.
Right.
But, I mean, their defense has looked okay this season. They haven't looked terrible. They've had some games where they've been really weak. But the offense in general has looked fairly decent, despite Peyton with what's going on from, like, the leadership quarterback role with those interceptions, too. Those are just... they're painful to look at, but the Broncos have looked good. I mean, they're undefeated for a reason. They're getting the wins whenever they need to. But, yeah, like you said, they are undefeated, and they're one of 5 teams that are going into Week 8 at 6-0, and this is the first time in NFL history this has ever happened. The other undefeated teams are New England, Carolina, Cincy, and Green Bay, so not much has changed in the past week, but... it's kind of sad to watch this happening to Peyton, where he's just not performing to where we're like everyone's so used to seeing him perform, especially after last season where he was just completely stellar. But we'll see what happens. But other NFL games that happened this weekend, the Seahawks beat the 49ers back on Thursday night 20-3. Russell Wilson looked pretty good in that. He only had 1 touchdown, but he passed for 235 yards, so that wasn't too bad. Jaguars beat the Bills 34-31. Redskins beat the Buccaneers in a really close game, 31-30. Wasn't expecting that to be that close. The Buccaneers are 2-4 on the season. The Redskins are 3-4. But I thought the Redskins would get a little bit more of a bigger win there, but 31-30, that's really exciting. The Saints beat the Colts 27-21. Vikings beat the Lions 28-19. Chiefs beat the Steelers 23-13. Rams beat the Browns 24-6. Dolphins beat the Texans 44-26. Patriots beat the Jets 30-23. I thought that would be much of a bigger win for the Patriots. Did not see that being just a one touchdown differential. Raiders beat the Chargers 37-29. Giants beat the Cowboys 27-20. And the Panthers beat the Eagles 27-16. So the Monday night game this week, which will be happening tonight at 8:30, is the Ravens and the Cardinals. The Ravens are 1-5 on this season. They are not looking like the Ravens team most people are used to seeing. I mean, this is probably one of the worst Ravens teams I have seen in a long time. And that's, I mean, yeah, I'm a Steelers fan, but it's sad to see that for the Ravens. I mean, they're a rival of Pittsburgh with the AFC North and everything, but you expect the Ravens to be much more competitive than a 1-5 record. And they're 1-3 on the road, so who knows what's going to happen with the Cardinals being 4-2 and 2-1 at home. I'm expecting Larry Fitzgerald to have another big game. He has 6 touchdowns this season with 583 yards. Those are kind of small numbers that we're used to seeing with a receiver like that, but he can definitely put up yards whenever he needs to, and especially with Carson Palmer as the quarterback who's been stellar through his career. He has had really good seasons. He has 14 touchdowns, on this season with 1,737 yards. So who knows what's going to happen in that game. It should be a really good one. But looking over at the MLB really quick, the World Series is finally here this week. 10 teams that went into the postseason have now been narrowed down to 2, and it's going to be the Royals for the AL and the Mets for the NL. So the Mets will be traveling to Kansas City for Game 1, and that's going to be tomorrow, so Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on Fox. And there's also a quick note that it is 20 days until Tennessee basketball tips off, so once the MLB is completely done, once the World Series is said and done, which it should be in a week unless they need like games 5, 6, and 7 at the beginning of next week, we'll start leaning more towards Tennessee basketball and seeing what they can do this season. Hopefully it's going to be a good year for the Vols and the Lady Vols, so that's something to look forward to. But that is all for this week's show. Pretty packed. A lot of wait what's were going on, and then we're going to see what happens with the Vols this week as they take on Kentucky. So be sure to join us next week as we talk about that.